Hi everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the Just About Managing podcast with John Lloyd, Chris Dingle and myself, Lee Smith. Before we start, just many thanks to everyone who's listened to the podcast so far from last week and for liking, sharing, commenting, your feedback and certainly your suggestions as well for future thought process and discussions, and I really do appreciate it. So keep that up guys, thank you. Today we're going to talk about two things, so work-related topic, and this is based on something we touched on last week, but also on some of the commentary received, which is around our first time in management and our experiences and our learnings from it, and see if that resonates with people out there as well. And then the second piece, the fun topic this week, is something memorable or strange from work, and none of us know what we're going to cover here either. So this could be an interesting one, and hopefully not too many embarrassing stories for us ourselves. So to kick us off with the first topic today of our first time in management, our experience and our learnings from it. Who'd like to go first with that one? Do you want me to kick off on that one, or do you want to jump in, John?
You can decide. You're the host, Lee, so you have
I'll
the
hand over
power
to you
of the
then, John.
mic.
I'll hand over to yourself then, John, on this one. Share your thoughts first.
Okay. I was thinking of when Chris posed the question to us on the chat. I was having a good think about, okay, right, what angle do I go here? And it was really interesting because some of the feedback we got from the listeners last week actually starts to, obviously this was part of that, but actually my answer weaves further elements into that. So you have to stop me if I keep going on too long, because obviously we've got to keep this to a relatively short time. So when I reflect back, probably the first 10 years of my career, I was mostly supervising people rather than managing people. Mm. And as a result, I never really had, I guess, true accountability for them as individuals or as teams. But actually, by default, I was learning the baby steps of management along the way. And in that 10 years, I kind of oscillated between being an SME or sole contributor and supervising a small number of people. So clock rolls forward. I'm in my early 30s and I've recently started at a new company, and I settled in really quickly, got on well with my boss. And I was overseeing in an operation risk department one of the businesses or divisions of the bank, and the guy who was running the department I was overseeing got promoted, and so I, fairly short notice, got parachuted in there on what was initially a temporary basis, and then actually became a permanent gig. To actually run the operational risk for the financial markets business in the UK. And suddenly there's me and ending up with huge imposter syndrome, because I was running a team of individuals that knew a lot more about operational risk than me. And I was working in a management team reporting to the COO. And all of the people in the management team were probably between 10 and 20 years older than me. And it was at that point, in terms of, I kind of felt I was, to start with, almost drowning. And I started to get my head above the water. But the imposter syndrome just didn't go away. And it's interesting as we've evolved through our careers, and I think particularly as each of us individually have kind of gone through our coaching journey and training, you start to think about tools and techniques, and it helps me now reflect upon that. So one of the most important things that happened to me was I was asked to go on a leadership course at London Business School, and within that course we did 360-degree feedback, which is the first time I didn't even know about it before then, let alone actually have the benefits of it. And it was through that 360-degree feedback which actually made me realise that actually what I was feeling and seeing was more about my fears and anxieties rather than actually what my team and my peers are actually thinking about how I was operating and my performance. And I always kind of look at that point in terms of going on that course, having a 360 feedback, and having some coaching from that actually that was the success of my career. And I think if I hadn't have had that, I think the imposter syndrome element and would have probably eaten away at me for a much, much longer period. It gave me this inner strength in terms of actually making me realise that what I was seeing in the mirror versus what everyone was seeing in real life were two different things. And that changed my whole mindset around how I managed, how I led, and went on from there. I consider myself very lucky that I had that opportunity to go on that course, because that was that changing point. But in some ways, you go kind of full circle to where I am today in terms of working with people in a coaching and advisory and a mentoring capacity. And I think all of those elements are what actually helped me succeed from that point forward. So there you go. Hopefully that answers your question.
I think it's a brilliant point, John, and great kudos to your management at the time, probably, to put you on that course at that early stage as well, because it set you up well, as you say, for the future then.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I suspect they could probably see that that I was struggling, but actually I've been lucky several times in my career, including this role, that I think having that belief of your manager in you, and they can see something you don't necessarily can, actually just pushes you that bit further.
Yeah, definitely. How about yourself, Chris? What was your sort of experience like?
John?
Thank you.
Yeah, cheers, Lee. I think I remember those kind of like situations, John, and when I was in your team and other people around there, there was this like open dialogue. So I think that kind of really was a key for you, right? I think those self-limiting beliefs are really interesting, and there's a huge thing around being like a first-time manager. I mean, I'm going to be really transparent here, right? And share some of my like screw-ups, okay? Because there's been a few, so actually we could be here a while. But structurally, I'm really interested in all of this. Management, leadership, the interactions between both, how that works, okay? Now, management, I mean, basically, if you're in that position, you are accountable. You own the outcome of a product or a service or a process, something for a customer and a client, right? And that brings reward and excitement and all those kind of like good things, but also it can be scary, because it's not just about the delivery of you, it's the delivery of the whole team, right? So this interaction and kind of like journey between accountability of yourself and accountability and ownership of the collective is a very distinct change, okay? And the first time that I screwed this up was when I was at Tesco's. Okay, so Tesco's, big department store in UK, and I was very good. I was working on the fruit and veg section, apples and pears, all that stuff, and I could put out apples and pears pretty well, right? And I was made like the leader of the team, and I was 17, and that was really exciting, but also a real learning curve then, right? So unbeknownst to me at the time, because I thought, you turn up, you do these things, and bish bosh, off we go. Actually, quite a lot of people don't want to be managed by a 17-year-old bish bosh. Let's get this done. And it was tough. Really tough. There was a real range of different people that I had to be part of this team with. So it was one of those things, and I think communication is hugely important as a first-time manager, right? We've got 2 ears, 2 eyes, 1 mouth. And I definitely made the mistake of communicating out and not really reading the room, not really reading the body language, and importantly, just like not listening, right? And then being really like stubborn and kind of like the ego getting in the way. So that was a lot
Heaven
harder than it
forbid.
should have been. Yeah, like really, really interesting times, difficult. And then by spending time with people and actually listening to them, understanding what their challenges are, what they actually wanted out of working there, meant I started to build those relationships. So the relationships are really key within that team, like hugely important. And to be honest, I didn't respect that when I got the role. I just thought, oh, I'll show what I can do. It's all about leading by example, etc. But actually, you can't carry all that weight of all that delivery when on your own. And actually, it's not about you; it's about you collectively doing it. So that was a real tough learning. But by spending time with people, so in like Model Land, out of the books on the shelf and the rest of it, communication has know, like, and trust within it. Okay, and we're all naturally good at different things in those spaces, right? So, people knowing who you are, knowing what you do, expressing, how things should work, the structure. Actually, I'm pretty good at that. I'm credible because I can get stuff done. But on my worst days, and some of you listening to this will know, I'm not very likable, right? That's definitely like a really difficult space for me, right? Because I can go on too long, not listen, all that kind of stuff. It's actually slowing down, respecting other people's views, listening, really important. Now, that's never been perfect, but it's never been as bad as Tesco's. So thank you, Tesco's. Not just for like double bubble money on Sundays, which was really good back then, but for helping me kind of learn that lesson in the deep end when I was 17.
Brilliant. I love that reflection as well, Chris, on that. I was actually at the competitors. I was at Safeway at the time prior to their takeover from Morrison. So it was Safeway competitors to Tesco's there, Chris. But I can imagine that environment there as well, particularly with the youngster trying to manage people in that team.
That was not fun.
No.
Yeah, I'd have quite happily gone over to Safeways or Morrison's, Lee. £1 more an hour.
I know.
A bit flighty, but there you go. So we're definitely not going to have like competitive like rivalries related to that. And you know how competitive I am, right? But on that Safeway, yeah, good on you.
I never made it to management there though, Chris. I did not. I did night crew there and just stacking the shelves. I was on the sort of the produce aisles though, not on the groceries, unfortunately. Never progressed to groceries. I wasn't trusted with the apples and pears.
I sold furniture for my teen living. So
Did you?
Yeah, MFI. So made for idiots. This is pre-IKEA days. So great fun. But
Fantastic. I love it. I think for me, it sort of touches on points that you've both raised. I think particularly the piece about being young in those sort of roles, Chris, resonates with other leading people who are older than you and that dynamic that creates in that stage in your career. But the other piece, to your point, John, was definitely the imposter syndrome for me. So similar to you, when I was early in my career in the corporate world, my first experience was a bit of supervisory role, like you said, not direct management, which was very different in there, in a team where I knew what I was doing, because I'd been a developer in that team, and therefore that supervisor role was quite different. And then my first foray into proper management was an interesting one and quite a key learning for me. It was actually put on to me by and this is probably another topic for us in the future, but one of my best ever managers, who I'll give a shout out to, was Mandy Kerr. I don't know if you ever came across Mandy Kerr at HSBC. But she was one of my earliest managers, one of my best managers there, and she put me forward for a role in a completely different function with somebody that she knew in that function, had worked with in the past. And it was leading a team of BAs. And it was an area I knew nothing about. I'd done BA work before, but I wasn't qualified in it. And there was a lot of people who were qualified in it there. And it was a real, in some ways, a baptism of fire, because it was, I just had to go in there and almost blag it to an extent in there. But I've talked this with a few coachees over the last year or so as well, is I think there's two ways of leading into management, and that they both have their own pros and cons. Is managing in a team that you know, or in a function that you know, where you can drill into detail if you want to, but the difficulty in that is lifting yourself out of the detail and not micromanaging. And then the other side of it is going into a function that you know nothing about, but then, and nobody that you know in that function either. I was completely independent there. I didn't know anybody in the team, and not knowing anything, and then having to rely on your team and those around you. And that was a brilliant learning for me. And actually, it was the first time I could say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I then spent 25 years of my career probably saying, I don't know, and getting more and more comfortable with saying, I don't know.
Yeah. And that's that really, I always describe it as the switch. So when you go from managing to leading, and I think that where people struggle is when you're managing, inevitably, you're responsible for that whole set of controls and processes within your team.
Yeah.
And suddenly when you're leading, you've got your managers actually performing that task. And the reality is you don't know everything. And I think a lot of people, they struggle with when that suddenly you go click and you've got all these activities you don't know inside out. And then you're drawing on all those other levels of intuition and capabilities in order to give you comfort, but also to be able to lead and drive and actually get outcomes. So I completely agree with you. But it's when you reflect upon, okay, when did that happen? And it's quite impactful in your memories, I think.
Oh, completely. And I think the other things I learned from that is that I sort of landed on my feet in that space, and it was a fantastic team. Brilliant people. They'll know who they are on this call, if they're listening as well. And the old manager of the team was still there in a different capacity, leading the development function. So I could lean on him, and he was again a brilliant support. And another key piece there, I had a fantastic manager in that space as well. So it was other than being a baptism of fire, I had this support network around me that were brilliant. The bit that I really struggled with, going back to your point, John, was massive imposter syndrome. Because all of that time, the previous part of my career was all about knowing what to do, knowing where to fix some code, knowing what code to write, even if it was bad code from my perspective. But you know a bit more about it. Whereas now it was this complete unknown. And in all honesty, not having anyone to talk to about it, and saying, I'm out of my depth.
Yeah.
I'm going to get found out. And I think what I loved about your story, John, was at that point, I hadn't really had any formal management training. I've been on a great leadership course, but not had any management training. And looking back now in sort of retrospect in there, and I'm not just saying this now because of the space we're in, but I really wish I'd known about coaching, because I think a coach at that point in my career would have absolutely changed my mentality and my mindset, where I wouldn't have woken up in those cold sweats in the morning thinking, I'm going to get found out. Someone's going to realise I'm no good at this. And talking to somebody openly and saying that would have made a huge, huge difference in there, and probably made the rest of my career journey slightly more comfortable. It was great anyway, but made it slightly more comfortable. And goes back to what you said, John, about that early support and that early coaching and training made all the difference for everything that followed for you.
And I think the other piece which I'd add into that as well was, again, it's on reflection and having a better understanding, but I ended up in that first complex kind of management come leadership role with a de facto mentor who was sat on the same management team. Well, I'll call out Gareth Baker, because he was very much a lifeline in terms of keeping an eye on me in that management group, but just very subtly guiding, but actually someone I could go and talk to in confidence.
Brilliant.
And having that, finding that individual and that bond with someone that actually is experience in working with you. I think it just gives you that greater depth and strength in terms of and to progress and succeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree, guys. Just so you know, and those out there on the podcast, hopefully you won't hear this too much, but I've got some builders in about like 10 yards over there through two walls, and they've just started to chop stuff up, like with a buzzsaw. So it could get quite noisy, but hopefully not. We will see. So I kind of like lean in a bit. I've got my headphones in, so hopefully it won't pick up too much of that noise. So, yeah, this whole thing around learning, right? You know, when you are a first-time manager, you might feel like you've kind of like made it, or, you know, that whole kind of like, well, I should know what to do. But what's interesting is that if you want to get better or at stuff faster and then learn more, there is just no substitute from like learning through and with other people. It's so much more rich. It's so much more fun. So I kind of think about this a bit like a tripod. Okay, so if you're kind of like being pushed forward into this new like platform role, and this platform is like a manager role, right? Then, then it's really good to be pushed up, pushed forward. And how do you support that? Well, one kind of like pillar is great, and one pillar could be a coach, right? Someone who kind of knows what good looks like, right? But that could be a bit scary or a bit daunting. So what's better than one pillar? Two pillars. So two pillars, that like mentor, that kind of like big brother, big sister type person who's kind of been there before, but who's really, you've got really good rapport with. And maybe that's like the Gareth thing at that moment there, like for you, John, and like other stuff. And then the important other thing, really, I think third thing in a tripod that makes a tripod really support the third leg is really friends. Other people who are in the same boat as you, or have gone through the same learnings as you, or are going through it at the same time as you. So some of those courses that I went on, where you kind of build those like lifelong career friends, right, going through the same learnings as you, they're really, really interesting, and it gives you like safe space to talk about this stuff. And it can be really tempting to only work on those things when you're there or when you're struggling.
Yeah.
And it's much better to be building that stuff up as you go. You know, you kind of get that like weird question around, well, why do I need to care about where the organisation's going? Why do I need to care about people in other teams and other departments? Why do I need to care about? Because you want to be a better version of you. You want to bring more skill to the career. You want, you know, this is much bigger than just if you do this job well.
Yeah.
Then more's going to come, and you know, you can that leadership shadow later. It will come, right? But you know, get out of your own way and learn with other people. It's hugely important. Like, so right now, I'm a practical example, right? Trying not to be Captain Tesco's, right? So I've just launched a business this week. That's scary and exciting, and all those really good things. But I'm learning from other people. Yeah, so Andrew DeGroot, brilliant former guy that I work with. He's got a coaching business in Exeter. He's been fantastic talking to him. Cressida Hamilton and her coaching business. You guys on here, because you're further ahead on this journey than me. And it's making it so much more enjoyable. Like, really. Like, you know, Lee and I will talk on a Friday. So this is more like in the friends bit of this kind of like learning thing. And we'll laugh about the things that have gone well and the things that have gone badly. Yeah, so I'm a first-time manager of me in this business. It's just weird. I just don't think this ever stops.
No.
Yeah, so I think, you know, thinking about this as, you know, the whole thing around growth mindset and thinking about learning as being like a lifelong learner. Yeah, it's never over, right? I mean, I could sit here and give loads of other examples of stuff that I've done badly, but yeah, maybe the guys will so cut through the internet cable and cut me off before I do that. But yeah, I totally agree with you guys. Learning from others, making this fun, right? You know, you're not just there to kind of deliver a product or a service. You're there to bring the best version of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is going to keep growing if you let it happen.
Completely. No, I completely agree. A great sort of topic we could probably continue on this for ages, as you say. There's loads in there, but just to summarise, if you were to put sort of one one key reflection or one key learning from that first time in management, what would it be, do you think? So for you, John, what would that be?
Being more self-aware of actually not just what you see, but what other people perceive. It's that look in the mirror versus the reality of what people see. I think you can be so misguided.
Brilliant. Completely agree. How about yourself, Chris?
To not think about the team being something that's yours. You are part of that team and you have a role in it, but you're never like the top of like a hierarchy in a team. If you put yourself at the centre of the whole organisation, anyone's in your team and you're in their team, right? So you need to kind of like put your ego down and, make sure that, yes, the management of the daily tasks, the weekly tasks get done, but it's about the collective win, not you.
Brilliant, love that. I think for me, I'm going to cheat, there's probably two, but I think the one thing that I look back and wish I'd done was having a coach or having someone to share that feeling with, if you like, of how I felt at my depth a little bit. And then the one key learning for me, I think, was the power of saying I don't know and learning the power of that, both for me, myself, and for you yourself as a manager or leader, and going I don't know, and how that almost feels freeing in a way, but also the power of the team itself.
Yeah, I always call that, Lee, the art of asking stupid questions.
Yeah, completely. It's the same thing, isn't it? It's that, and it's allowing yourself as that manager or leader to ask those stupid questions, say I don't know, then creates that environment. We talked about a psychological safety net. It creates that environment then for your team to either step in and fill the gaps or be able to say they don't know themselves as well. Yeah. And that vulnerability shown there. So brilliant discussion again, guys.
Good, thank you, Lee.
That's resonated. Moving on to the fun section, if you like, of the discussion today. So this is a strange or interesting moment from your work career, maybe a funny moment. So John, do you want to start again with this one?
Go on then. So this was, I hate to say, it was after work. I'd been out for a few drinks, but I'd caveat that I was not drunk. I was just happy and tired. Got on the train. It had been snowing, and as most people know, it doesn't regularly snow in London, but it had been snowing, so it was all a bit wet. And I got on the train for an hour's journey home, and I just wanted to sleep. And because I'm a conscientious individual, I decided to take my shoes off, and so I could put my feet up on the seat in front of me. Went sound asleep. I woke up 2 stations before getting off the train, and one of my shoes was missing. I was underneath the seats. I was walking up and down the carriage. And some joker decided to steal one of my shoes. I then had to limp down the platform, one shoe on and one shoe off, getting very cold, numb feet to the taxi rank to get home. I can still remember arriving home to my brother finding it incredibly funny, as did my work colleagues the next morning. But yes, so that's probably my strangest kind of work commute. But it's me trying to be a good citizen, and it backfiring on me. But someone had the last laugh on me on that one.
Fantastic. When was that, John, and what train was it?
Oh God! So that was Liverpool Street to Colchester line, and it was when I was working at Bankers Trust, so it would have been late 90s, early noughties.
So it could be maybe if someone's listening who was on that Chichester line at that point, or Colchester line, sorry, at that point, and was in the late 90s, they could return John's shoe to him. Yeah, that would be much appreciated.
A nice black brogue, they were,
Oh, actually, John, I think I found one of them a few years ago on the train. There was a guy. That'd be so good if that was true.
Brilliant, wasn't it? Brilliant. I love it, John. Great one.
When I left the department that I was working in, when that happened, when I left that department, my leaving presents that my boss wrapped up in a shoebox was a single shoe.
Brilliant. That's excellent.
They're the things that people remember, aren't they, about your career? It's never the good things. It's always the embarrassing, humiliating aspects. Fantastic. I love it. How about yourself, Chris? What was yours?
Oh, this is just like front of mind pretty much all the time. Working in KL, and there was a real kind of like two hats that I was wearing there, right? There was a functional hat related to the investment bank, but then there's also you're part of a leadership team related to Malaysia. So you have to go to and participate in like HSBC wide things as well as your kind of like business or function. And I learned so much in that time. Okay. And this is just something that will always stick with me. I can remember this like it was yesterday. It's just like exciting. The hairs on the back of my neck, because there's none on my head, stand up telling this story. So there's a need to boost up continuous improvement in Malaysia, in KL, and the centre manager is a chap called Mike Eden, a really interesting, engaging, line-backing American football type guy, larger than life person, and I was part of his management team there, and Mike had this vision for we're going to be number one at continuous improvement. Let's go. Right. So there's like 3,000 people. How do you motivate 3,000 people to do this? And we'd been working on things to boost the engagement up around like the area that I was in, and people had, that really started to happen. We were starting to get really good engagement scores. The motivation was up in the team. It was like really, really good. So Mike said to me, "Oh, look, I'm going to launch this. Can you help me? I'm going to get, there's going to be you, me, and a couple of other people. We're going to do a launch." So I said, yeah, no problem, Mike, no problem. That sounds fine, Lee. Okay, sounds fine. And then I get an email about the launch, and it's in 2 days' time, and it has a link that says, this is where you need to go to get what you need. And there's a picture which shows what you're going to do. So continuous improvement, eliminate, automate, streamline. Perfect. That sounds really, really easy to remember. Eliminate, automate, streamline. And then you see a picture underneath. Eliminate, Terminator. Automate, Optimus Prime. Streamline, Spiderman. Head in hands. You just know, looking around that Manco, which one I'm going to have to do. Click on the link. Yes, there you go. Spandex Spider-Man. That's what I'm going to have to do. So 2 days later, I'm crouched down in my spandex behind a big billboard as Mike Eden descends from the top of KL dressed as Batman on a cherry picker and then have to pop out of a streamlined booth as the Spider-Man music plays. We then, as a foursome, run around the KL building, getting people engaged about eliminate, automate, streamline. The worst thing being, right, is not me as Spider-Man and not even Mike as Batman. The worst thing is that automate, the guy doing automate, they couldn't get Optimus Prime costume. So they got a Darth Vader costume. And the guy was 5'6". So there's a 5'6" Darth Vader. Mike Eden in his floppy-haired man outfit, because that's the best mum they could get. And a guy saying, "Come with me if you want to live." Yeah, so that for me, Lee, is definitely the wackiest story ever to do with work. But the main thing that taught me more than anything is that the best teams I've ever been part of, they play to win and they're fair to each other and everybody, but they have fun.
Yeah.
Right? It is the magic dust that makes the world go round and personally gets me out of bed. But without a doubt, that's my story.
Fantastic. That's brilliant.
I've still got a Spider-Man costume, Lee, as well.
We'll do that one of the future ones.
Different story for that one, though.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Beat that, Lee Smith.
I don't think I can. I don't think I can. It's not a. I was thinking about this when we sort of floated this idea earlier this week, and it's not really. It's not as impactful a story, if you like, as the two of you. But it was, for me, it just summed up the environment I was in. So when I worked in Sheffield, we had some brilliant characters in there. So this is in. I joined the organisation in 1998. Obviously, won't name the organisation. I joined in 1998. And it was, I mean, to set the tone for some of those that are listening, in our sort of era, guys, there, but 1998, there were just, people were still smoking at their desk in the office. And they were just starting to iron that out a little bit. And that was quite a furore in Sheffield, because people were so used to it. But some of the characters we had there in the team, we had a great team when I first joined. It was a brilliant team to learn from. I had no experience of IT at all, and some great guys there. And some brilliant early managers as well. But one of the things that really resonated with me around the character side of things was two particular characters there, who were one was an older guy who worked with us, who always wore a mat. Anybody listening will know who this is. I won't name him, obviously, and hopefully he's still around. And he was a really nice guy, but very different, and wore a Mac all the time. And I think it was Wednesday, he would go down to the market in Sheffield, and he would come back with a carrier bag and a brown bag in it with his tripe for dinner. And then he'd pop his tripe on his desk in the office, and people would just wander by thinking, here he is again with his tripe, and he'd just sat there on the corner of his desk, nicely warming through the day, ahead of him heading home to cook his tripe for dinner. And that was one character. And the other character that always sticks in my mind was another brilliant guy. He was absolutely fantastic at his job, and he lived slightly outside of Sheffield, and so he'd go to the local nightclubs on a Friday night, and he enjoyed that life of things. He was slightly older, and what we didn't realise was, until it was in the days of the old cabinets, I mean the old grey metal cabinets where you'd have to have all the paperwork.
Yeah.
Well, in one of those cabinets one day, we opened it and found a duvet. And what we realised was that this guy, because he couldn't necessarily get home on those evenings to slightly out of Sheffield, he would come back to the office and he would sleep under his desk. And occasionally get found there if people came in on a Saturday morning to overtime. There'd be somebody snoring away under a desk with his nice duvet tucked in. So it was prepared, it was well prepared in there. But I think those two just summed up the great characters that were in that team at that time, that sort of formed my early part of corporate world again.
Oh, love it. Great. Yeah, it's funny as you talk, Lee. It kind of ignites memories of individuals and characters of people I've worked with, and if we had more time, I'd probably start regaling some of those as well. But it's given me some nice thoughts to go away and think about for the rest of today.
I'm sure there'll be some brilliant ones for future episodes.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, and Lee, it means you're like a easy stopover if you ever come by.
Yeah,
Easy got a duvet for you under this desk.
I'll just jump on it, brother. Exactly, I'll be sorted.
Yeah, good.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, John. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone that's listened again. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Just About Managing. Remember to follow us on whichever sort of podcast channel you listen to. Like us on LinkedIn when we share the posts, and come back and listen to us in the future. And also continue to share your thoughts and suggestions and questions, because we've loved reading some of those and getting those in. So thank you very much, everyone. We've been John Lloyd, Chris Dingle, and I've been Lee Smith, and you've been listening to Just About Managing. Goodbye, everyone.